Captain Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of the UNS Resolute, his eyes fixed on the swirling blue-green marble below. The planet called Valterra Prime had been designated as a Class 4 colony world, perfect for human settlement. The initial surveys had shown abundant water, breathable atmosphere, and rich mineral deposits. But the first contact team had discovered something unexpected. The planet was already inhabited by a sentient species, the Valtari, who had built a civilization that rivaled humanity's own technological achievements. The Valtari were reptilian in appearance, with scaled skin that shifted colors based on their emotional state. They stood taller than humans, with elongated limbs and four-fingered hands that moved with surprising dexterity. Their cities were architectural marvels, crystalline structures that seemed to grow from the Earth itself, powered by geothermal energy harvested from the planet's active core. The problem was simple and brutal. The Valtari were dying. A plague had swept through their population, a viral nightmare that attacked their nervous systems and caused a slow, agonizing degeneration. The disease had been present for decades, but in the last 5 years, it had mutated into something far more aggressive. Over 70% of the Valtari population was infected, and the mortality rate among the infected was approaching 90%. Their scientists had been unable to find a cure, their medical technology stretched to its limits by the relentless assault of the pathogen. The United Nations Space Command had made its decision based on cold logic. The Valtari were doomed. Within a decade, perhaps 2 at most, their species would be extinct. The planet would be empty, its resources waiting for human hands to claim them. The evacuation order had been issued. All human personnel were to withdraw from Valterra Prime within 72 hours, leaving the Valtari to their fate. It was the pragmatic choice, the logical choice. Why waste resources trying to save a dying species when those same resources could be used to establish a thriving human colony? Marcus had read the reports, studied the data, and watched the video feeds of Valtari cities where the infected lay dying in the streets. He had seen the desperation in their eyes, the way they clutched their children close, trying to shield them from a disease that had no cure. He had spoken with Valtari elders who had pleaded with him for help, their scales flickering with the pale gray of despair. The human captain had a decision to make. He could follow orders, evacuate his crew, and leave this world behind. The UNSC would send another ship in a few years to begin the colonization process, and humanity would have a new home among the stars. It was the safe choice, the career choice. He would be commended for his professionalism, promoted perhaps, and given command of a more prestigious vessel. Or he could do something else entirely. Something that would make him a traitor to his own species. Something that would cost him his career, his freedom, perhaps even his life. He had not been able to sleep for the past 3 nights. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of the Valtari children. Their scales were a bright, vibrant green in moments of happiness, but now they were dull, faded, the color of dying leaves. They looked at him with eyes that held no hope, only a weary acceptance of their fate. His first officer, Commander Sarah Chun, had tried to reason with him. "Captain, we have our orders. The Valtari cannot be saved. We have to think about the future of humanity." The future of humanity. Those words had become a mantra among the crew, a justification for abandoning an entire civilization. But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that if humanity was the kind of species that abandoned others to death simply because it was convenient, then perhaps humanity didn't deserve to have a future. He had called a meeting with his senior officers, the ones he trusted most. Engineering, medical, tactical, and science. They had gathered in his private quarters, away from the prying ears of the rest of the crew. The atmosphere was tense, everyone aware that their captain was about to say something that could get them all court-martialed. "I'm not leaving them," Marcus said, his voice calm and steady. "I can't." Commander Chen opened her mouth to protest, but he held up a hand to stop her. "I know what the orders say. I know what the UNSC wants. But I've been a soldier my entire adult life, and I've followed orders that I didn't agree with. I've done things that I'm not proud of, but I've never walked away from someone who needed help. And I'm not going to start now." The officers exchanged glances, uncertainty clear on their faces. Lieutenant Commander Thomas Vance, the ship's chief medical officer, was the first to speak. "Captain, even if we stay, what can we do? We have a basic medical bay, not a research facility. We don't have the equipment or the expertise to develop a cure for an alien disease. We're not prepared for this. Marcus nodded, acknowledging the point. You're right. We're not prepared. But we have something the Valtari don't have. We have a different perspective. Our medical science has developed along different lines than theirs. We've faced pandemics before. We've fought viruses that seemed impossible to defeat. Maybe we can see something they've missed. He turned to his science officer, Dr. Amelia Foster. Amelia, you've been studying their medical databases. What have you found? Amelia was a small woman with intense eyes and a mind that never seemed to stop working. She had been on the surface multiple times, working alongside Valtari scientists, trying to understand the nature of the plague. Captain, the Valtari have made incredible advances in some areas of medical science. Their understanding of genetics is far beyond ours. But they've been working on this problem for decades, and they've hit a wall. The virus mutates too quickly for them to develop a vaccine. It hides in the nervous system, making it almost impossible to target without causing collateral damage. Their treatment methods are sophisticated, but the virus is smarter. Then we need to be smarter, Marcus said. I want you to take a team to the surface. Work with their scientists. Share everything we know, learn everything they know. We're going to solve this problem together. And if we can't? Commander Chen asked. What then? Marcus met her eyes, a grim determination in his gaze. Then we stay anyway. We stay and we help them in whatever way we can. We treat the sick. We comfort the dying. We do everything in our power to ease their suffering. We don't abandon them to face this alone. The officers looked at each other, the weight of his words settling over them. This was a decision that could destroy their careers. But it was also a decision that would define who they were as human beings. I'm not asking you to agree with me, Marcus continued. I'm not even asking you to support me. If any of you want to return to the Resolute and follow the evacuation orders, I won't stop you. You can take a shuttle up and wait out the 72 hours. I'll log that you followed the chain of command appropriately. One by one, they made their choices. Commander Chen stood firm beside her captain, loyalty overcoming her doubts. Dr. Foster was already planning her research protocols, her mind racing with possibilities. Lieutenant Vance nodded slowly, accepting the challenge. The others followed suit, a quiet resolve filling the room. Marcus felt a surge of gratitude for these people, these men and women who were willing to follow him into madness. He knew they would face consequences for this. The UNSC would not simply let this insubordination slide. But for now, they had work to do. The next 72 hours would be critical. The evacuation shuttles would arrive from the fleet, expecting to pick up human personnel. Marcus would have to make contact with the UNSC, inform them of his decision, and face the consequences. But first, he needed to speak with the Valtari. High Elder Thrax was the leader of the Valtari people, an ancient being whose scales had dimmed to a deep bronze with age. He had been a scientist before the plague had claimed his family, had spent decades trying to find a cure for the disease that was destroying his people. He had seen hope die in the eyes of his colleagues, one by one. Marcus had requested a private meeting with the Elder, and they now sat in the High Elder's chambers, a circular room with walls made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. The atmosphere was heavy with incense and the subtle scent of alien flowers. I have heard the reports, Captain Webb, Thrax said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to come from deep within his chest. Your people are leaving us. We understood that this would happen eventually. We do not blame you for this decision. Marcus shook his head. My people are leaving. I am not. I am staying with my crew, and we are going to help you fight this plague. Thrax's scales flickered through a rapid sequence of colors. Surprise, disbelief, hope. The colors settled into a deep blue of cautious optimism. Captain Webb, you have not been among us long. Perhaps you do not understand the extent of this plague. It has already killed millions of us, and it will kill millions more. There is no cure. We have accepted this. We have made our peace with our fate. I haven't made my peace with it, Marcus said firmly. And I refuse to accept that there is no hope. My people have fought many diseases. We've lost battles, but we've also won wars. I believe we can find a way. Your confidence is admirable, Captain, Thrax said. But we have seen many confident scientists come and go. They all failed. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes locked on the elders. I'm not a scientist. I'm a soldier. A soldier who has been given a choice between following orders and doing what's right. I've made my choice. I'm going to stay here and fight alongside you. I'm not going to let your people die. Thrax was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. And what will you do if you are ordered to leave? Marcus smiled grimly. I'm a captain of a starship. I have many different ways to ignore orders. But I'm hoping it won't come to that. I'm hoping that when my superiors see what we can accomplish together, they'll change their minds. The fleet will not allow you to disobey their command, Thrax said. They will send more ships. They will force you to leave. Let them try, Marcus said. I will do whatever it takes to save your people, even if it means fighting my own. He extended his hand, a human gesture of friendship. Thrax stared at the offered hand for a moment, then reached out with his own four-fingered claw, wrapping it around Marcus's in a surprisingly gentle grip. Then we will stand together, Captain Webb. Whatever happens, we will not face this alone. As Marcus walked back to the shuttle that would take him to the Resolute, he felt a strange sense of peace settle over him. He had made his decision, and he would see it through, no matter the cost. The first thing he did when he returned to the ship was to destroy the automated evacuation protocols in the ship's computer. He couldn't have the ship automatically lifting off without him. Then he sent a message to the UNSC command, explaining his decision in clear, firm terms. He had expected anger, threats, perhaps even a declaration that he was a traitor. What he received instead was silence. A cold, deliberate silence that was somehow worse than any threat. The 72 hours passed, and the evacuation shuttles never arrived. Marcus knew that his message had been received, but the UNSC had chosen not to respond. They were making a statement. He was on his own. The silence from the UNSC fleet stretched into weeks. Marcus kept his crew busy, coordinating with the Valtari medical teams, sharing data, and trying to find any weakness in the virus that had ravaged the alien population. Dr. Foster spent countless hours in the Valtari research facilities, working alongside their top scientists. Lieutenant Commander Vance set up a field hospital in one of the larger cities, treating the infected and trying to ease their suffering. But progress was slow. The virus was incredibly complex, and every time the Valtari scientists thought they had found a vulnerability, it would mutate and adapt. Marcus could see the despair creeping back into the eyes of the Valtari. They had been given a glimmer of hope, and now that hope was fading. One evening, he received a visitor in his personal quarters. It was a Valtari woman named Kayla, a scientist who had become his primary liaison with the research teams. Her scales were a soft purple, the color of quiet contemplation. She was one of the few Valtari who remained healthy, the plague having inexplicably skipped over her. Captain Webb, I must speak with you about something important, she said, settling into the chair across from him. Her movements were graceful, almost fluid, and Marcus had become accustomed to the subtle ways the Valtari communicated their emotions. I'm listening, he said, pouring her a glass of water. He had learned early on that the Valtari appreciated hospitality, even if their physiology couldn't tolerate human food. The research is going well, she began, but I believe we are approaching a crisis point. Crisis? We're working faster than we ever have before. We're making progress. Kayla shook her head, her scales shifting to a deeper shade of concern. Progress in the lab, yes, but we are running out of time. We have vaccines that could potentially prevent new infections, but they are months away from being viable. We have a potential treatment that could slow the progression of the disease, but it requires a rare isotope we have not yet extracted in sufficient quantities. Marcus understood. The practical applications of their research were still far from being ready. The Valtari were dying faster than they could be helped. What happens if we can't get the isotope, he asked. Kayla's scales flickered with the pale gray of despair. Then we will be forced to wait. And many more will die, including some of my own family. They have been infected, Captain. Marcus felt a knot form in his chest. He had grown close to Kayla, had seen her dedication to her people, and the thought of her suffering the same loss that had already claimed so many of her kind was almost unbearable. There has to be something we can do, he said. Some way to speed up the extraction. Kayla met his gaze. The isotope is found deep beneath the surface, in the volcanic regions of the planet. We have the technology to reach it, but the process is slow and dangerous. The Valtari are a cautious people. We have always prioritized safety over speed. But perhaps your human approach could be different. Marcus understood the message behind her words. The Valtari had been holding back, clinging to their cautious methods even as their people died. But the situation had changed. Humanity was here, and humans had always been willing to take risks when the stakes were high enough. "I'll speak with my engineering team," he said. "We have experience with dangerous mining operations. We can help." "Thank you, Captain," Kayla said, and for a moment, her scales brightened to a hopeful green. "There is something else. Something I hesitated to bring up, but I feel you must know." "What is it?" "I have been in contact with some of the other worlds, the ones that have not yet fallen to the plague. They have resources they might be willing to share, but they are afraid. They believe that if they help us, they might draw the attention of the plague themselves. They are hoping to survive by simply sealing themselves off from the rest of the Valtari civilization. And you think you can convince them otherwise?" "I think I can try," she said. "But I need something to offer them. A reason to hope that their help could actually make a difference." Marcus thought about it for a moment. He understood the Valtari's fear. The plague had been devastating, and the surviving colonies had probably been paralyzed by terror. But they needed those resources. Without them, the cure would remain out of reach. "Tell them I will guarantee their safety," he said. "Tell them that the human ship Resolute will protect them from whatever threats may come. And tell them that if we succeed, they will be hailed as heroes who helped save their species." "Those are bold promises, Captain." "I don't make promises I can't keep," Marcus said. "I have a starship with weapons that can match anything in the Valtari fleet. And I have a crew that will fight to protect anyone who stands with us." Kayla bowed her head, the gesture a sign of deep respect among her people. "You are a remarkable being, Captain Webb. In all my years, I have never met someone so willing to risk everything for those he barely knows." Marcus shook his head. "I'm just a man who made a choice. And I'm sticking with it." The extraction operation began the next day. Lieutenant Commander Vance had been a mining engineer before he switched to medicine, and he immediately saw ways to improve the Valtari methods. The human equipment was more rugged, designed to operate in harsh conditions, and the Valtari were impressed by the way the human team worked together. "The Valtari are organized, but they're slow," Vance explained to Marcus. "They double-check everything, which is good for safety, but it means they miss opportunities. We're faster because we trust our instincts more." "Is it safe?" Vance shrugged. "Define safe." "It's dangerous, yes, but we've got good people down there, and they know what they're doing." The extraction proceeded at a rapid pace. The isotope was being brought up faster than the Valtari had ever managed, and the scientists were already working on synthesizing the treatment. But the dangerous work in the volcanic regions took its toll. 2 human engineers were injured when a geological instability caused a collapse, and one of the Valtari was killed, sacrificing himself to save others. Marcus visited the injured crew members in the medical bay, assuring them that their efforts were appreciated and that they were making a difference. He felt the weight of their sacrifice pressing down on him, the knowledge that his decisions had led to their suffering. But he also saw the determination in their eyes, the belief that what they were doing was right. One evening, as Marcus was reviewing the latest progress reports, Commander Chen approached him with a communication from UNSC Command. The silence had finally been broken. "They're demanding an update," Chen said, her voice tight. "They want to know what we've accomplished and why we haven't been court-martialed yet." Marcus read the message carefully. It was cold and formal, filled with legal language and threats of severe consequences. But he noticed something in the subtext that Chen had missed. They hadn't sent a ship to forcibly remove him. They hadn't declared him an enemy of humanity. They were leaving the door open for reconciliation. "Tell them the truth," he said. "Tell them we're trying to save an entire civilization, and that we're making progress. If they want to court-martial me, they'll have to come here to do it. And if they do come," Marcus smiled grimly, "then we'll have to be ready to negotiate. But I don't think they will. I think they're waiting to see if we succeed. If we manage to find a cure, we'll be heroes. If we fail, we'll be scapegoats." She nodded slowly. She had come to understand her captain's perspective over the weeks they had spent together on Valtera Prime. She still had her doubts, but she had also seen the faces of the Valtari children, the hope that had blossomed in their eyes when they learned that the humans were staying. "What do we do in the meantime?" she asked. "We work," Marcus said. "We work as hard as we can, and we hope that it's enough." The work continued, and the progress was steady. The treatment was beginning to show results, reversing the progression of the disease in the early stages. The vaccines were undergoing testing, and the initial results were promising. The The Valtari were starting to believe that they might actually survive. But the situation took an unexpected turn. A group of extremist Valtari, who had lost their families to the plague and had been driven to madness by their grief, attacked the human encampment. They blamed the humans for the plague, believing that they had brought it with them, a conspiracy theory that had been spreading in the more isolated regions of the planet. The attack was vicious and brutal, and several human personnel were killed before the assailants were stopped. The Valtari government was horrified and apologized profusely, but the damage was done. Marcus was faced with a crisis of trust. He called a meeting with the Valtari leadership, and the atmosphere was tense. The extremist violence had shaken the foundations of their alliance, and there was real concern that it could spiral into a broader conflict. "We are aware that this was done by a radical group," Marcus said. "But we cannot ignore the fact that there are those among the Valtari who see us as enemies. We have lost good people in this attack." High Elder Thrax looked stricken. "Captain Webb, we are devastated by this tragedy. The perpetrators will be brought to justice, and we will do everything in our power to prevent it from happening again." "Prevention is not enough," Marcus said. "We need to understand why this happened. We need to address the underlying grievances, the fears, and the mistrust." "You speak as a diplomat, Captain," Kayla said softly. "But I sense that you are also speaking as a warrior. What would you have us do?" Marcus looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each Valtari leader in turn. "We need to show the Valtari people that we are not their enemies. We need to demonstrate that we are here to help. But we also need to protect ourselves. I'm going to ask for something that I know will be difficult for you." "What is it?" Thrax asked. "I want to establish a military presence on your planet. Human soldiers will be stationed to protect our personnel and to help with the relief efforts. We will not interfere with your governance, and we will respect your culture and your laws. But we need to be able to defend ourselves and the work we are doing." The request was met with silence. Marcus knew what he was asking. It was an unprecedented intrusion into Valtari sovereignty, and it could be seen as a precursor to an invasion. But Thrax surprised him. "We will agree to your request, Captain Webb, but only on one condition. Your soldiers must work alongside our own. They must learn our ways and teach us theirs. We will form a joint security force, demonstrating our cooperation to all of our people." Marcus extended his hand. "Agreed." The joint security force became a symbol of the growing alliance between humans and Valtari. Soldiers from both species trained together, learned each other's languages, and developed a mutual respect that transcended their physical differences. The extremist groups began to lose support as the majority of Valtari saw the tangible benefits of human cooperation. The treatment was working, the vaccines were being distributed, and the plague was beginning to recede. Marcus watched from the observation deck as the first cargo ship from the allied Valtari colonies arrived, bringing medical supplies and additional personnel. The initial fear had subsided, replaced by a cautious optimism. The isolated worlds were beginning to believe that they could survive, and they were willing to help their brothers and sisters. "I still find it hard to believe that you humans exist," Kayla said, joining him on the deck. "Your capacity for hope, it is truly remarkable." "Is it?" Marcus asked. "I think it's just a matter of perspective. We've been through a lot in our history. We've faced extinction-level events, wars, plagues, and we've always found a way to survive. We've made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but we've also learned from them." Kayla's scales shifted to a thoughtful shade of green. "Our history is different. We had a golden age, a time of peace and prosperity. But when the plague came, we lost our way. We became fearful, suspicious, divided. The extremist groups are a result of that fear. They are not evil, they are just terrified." "And what do they fear?" Marcus asked. "They fear that our civilization is being replaced," Kayla said. "That the humans will take our place. That we will become nothing more than a footnote in your history books." Marcus shook his head. "That's not what we want. We came here to colonize. Yes, but that was before we knew you existed. Now that we do, we want to be neighbors, not conquerors." "The UNSC might not agree with you," Kayla said quietly. "I have read your communications. They are not interested in being our neighbors." Marcus had to admit that she was right. The UNSC was still maintaining its distance, still watching and waiting. But they had not interfered, had not tried to force him out. That was a positive sign, even if it was a small one. "We can only control what we do," Marcus said. "And what I'm doing is helping the Valtari. Whatever the UNSC decides to do after that, we'll deal with it. Are you prepared for that? Kayla asked. Are you prepared for a confrontation with your own people? Marcus looked at her, his expression softening. I hope it doesn't come to that. But if it does, I'll be ready. I've made my choice, and I'm prepared to face the consequences. Kayla bowed her head. Then I am proud to stand by your side, Captain Webb. The weeks turned into months, and the situation on Valterra Prime continued to improve. The treatment was showing remarkable results, and the vaccines were being distributed to the remaining Valtari populations. The death toll was still high, but the tide had turned. The plague was finally being pushed back. But the UNSC had not forgotten about Marcus's insubordination. The communication from command had continued, demanding a full accounting of the situation. Marcus had sent detailed reports, emphasizing the progress that had been made and the potential for a lasting alliance with the Valtari. But it was clear that the UNSC was not convinced. Commander Chen approached Marcus one evening, her expression grim. Captain, we just received a communication from the UNSC fleet. They're sending a ship, the UNS Victory. They're coming to take you into custody. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The Victory was a heavy cruiser, heavily armed and designed for combat. If they wanted to, they could simply blow the Resolute out of the sky and take him by force. When will they arrive? He asked. Within 48 hours, Chen said. Marcus thought for a moment, weighing his options. He could surrender, accept the court-martial, and hope that his actions would be understood in the context of the greater good. But he had also made promises to the Valtari, promises that he intended to keep. Prepare the ship for departure, he said finally. Chen's eyes widened. Captain, are you running? No, Marcus said. I'm going to meet them. I'm going to talk to them, face to face, and explain what we've accomplished here. They need to understand that this isn't about insubordination. It's about doing what's right. And if they don't listen? Marcus smiled grimly. Then I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. The next 2 days were filled with preparations. Marcus met with the Valtari leaders one last time, explaining the situation and assuring them that he would do everything in his power to protect their interests. Captain Webb, you have done more for our people than anyone else in our history, High Elder Thrax said, his voice thick with emotion. If you are taken, we will never forget what you have done. We will fight for your freedom. Don't fight, Marcus said. The last thing I want is for this to escalate into a war between humans and Valtari. Stay peaceful, stay strong, and keep fighting the plague. That's the best way to honor what we've accomplished here. The Resolute lifted off from the surface of Valterra Prime, leaving behind the planet that had become Marcus's cause. The ship's engines hummed as they propelled the vessel toward the intercept point where the Victory was expected to arrive. The hours passed slowly, and Marcus spent most of them in his quarters, reviewing his arguments and preparing for the confrontation. He knew that he could be facing imprisonment, perhaps even execution, depending on how the UNSC decided to interpret his actions. But he had made his peace with that possibility. When the Victory finally appeared on the sensors, Marcus felt a strange sense of relief. The waiting was over. It was time to face the consequences. The Victory's commander, Admiral Helena Morrison, was an imposing figure with a reputation for strict adherence to protocol. She had been a mentor to Marcus early in his career, and he had hoped that their shared history might soften her stance. Instead, she confronted him with cold efficiency. Captain Webb, you are charged with insubordination, violation of direct orders, and treason. You will surrender your command and submit yourself to custody. Marcus stood his ground. Admiral, before you take me into custody, I ask that you review the reports I have sent. The Valtari are not a dying species. They are a thriving civilization that has been devastated by a plague, but they are fighting back. We have developed treatments and vaccines that are saving lives. We have built an alliance that could benefit humanity in ways we can't even imagine. Admiral Morrison's expression did not change. You had no authorization to take these actions. Your orders were clear. You were to evacuate and leave the planet behind. I couldn't do that, Marcus said. I looked into their eyes, Admiral. I saw their children dying. I saw their hope fading. I couldn't just abandon them. Your feelings are irrelevant to the mission, Morrison said. You are a soldier, Captain. You follow orders. Marcus felt a flash of anger, but suppressed it. With respect, Admiral, I am more than a soldier. I am a human being. And human beings are supposed to help each other, not abandon each other to death. That's what makes us different from the machines we build. Morrison was silent for a moment, and Marcus could see something flicker in her eyes. Was it doubt? Curiosity? Very well, she said finally. You will be placed in custody aboard the Victory. Your crew will be subject to review. But I will review your reports, and I will consider your arguments. Marcus felt a surge of hope. It wasn't a victory, but it was a chance. Marcus was confined to a small cabin aboard the Victory, guarded by 2 armed Marines at all times. The cabin was Spartan, with only a bed and a small desk, but it was comfortable enough. He spent most of his time reviewing his notes and preparing for what he knew would be an extensive interrogation. Commander Chun and the other senior officers had been placed under similar restrictions, but they were allowed to communicate with him through secure channels. The crew of the Resolute had been officially relieved of duty, but they remained loyal to their captain. It's not as bad as it could be, Chun told him over the vidlink. They're treating us well, and they're actually reading our reports. Admiral Morrison seems genuinely interested in what we accomplished. That's good, Marcus said. That's better than I expected. What do you think will happen? Chun asked. Marcus shook his head. I don't know. It depends on what the Admiral decides to do with her recommendations. She could send me back to Earth for court-martial, or she could decide to let me go. It's out of my hands now. It's not out of your hands, Chun said. We're still fighting for you, Captain. Marcus smiled. I know, and I appreciate it. But don't do anything reckless. The last thing we need is a mutiny. The interrogations began the next day, and Marcus faced a panel of UNSC officers, including Admiral Morrison. They asked him endless questions about his actions, his motivations, and his assessment of the Valtari situation. Marcus answered honestly, explaining every decision he had made and the reasons behind it. Why did you decide to disobey orders? One of the officers asked. What made you think you had the right to act against the command of the UNSC? Marcus took a moment to compose his answer. I believe that the orders were wrong. I believe that the UNSC was making a decision based on incomplete information. The Valtari are not a dying species. They are a civilization in crisis. They needed help, and I was in a position to help them. I couldn't walk away. Your duty was to follow orders, the officer persisted. The UNSC made a strategic decision based on the best available information at the time. The best available information was wrong, Marcus said bluntly. The UNSC had not seen what I had seen. They had not stood in the streets of Valtari cities, watching children die. They had not held the hands of the dying. I had the information they lacked, and I acted on it. Admiral Morrison leaned forward. Captain Webb, I have read your reports. I have spoken with your crew. I have even had conversations with some of the Valtari representatives who accompanied you. Your claims about the Valtari situation are accurate, but that does not excuse your insubordination. I'm not asking to be excused, Marcus said. I'm asking to be understood. I made a choice, and I would make the same choice again. If that means I have to face a court-martial, so be it. But at least I can look myself in the mirror and know that I did the right thing. Morrison was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. We will take a recess, she said. I need time to think. The hours stretched into days, and Marcus began to think that the silence meant the worst. Maybe the Admiral was preparing to send him back to Earth for trial. Maybe he would never see Valtera Prime again. Then one evening, the guards escorted him to Admiral Morrison's private quarters. The Admiral was seated at a small table, a glass of water in front of her. She gestured for Marcus to sit. I've made a decision, she said. I'm going to recommend that your case be closed. I'm going to recommend that you be reinstated as captain of the Resolute, with a commendation for your actions. Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. Admiral, I don't know what to say. Morrison held up a hand. Don't thank me yet. There are conditions. First, you will continue to coordinate with the Valtari, but you will also work directly with UNSC diplomatic personnel. We're going to turn this alliance into something official. Of course, Marcus said. Second, you will submit a full report on the Valtari's technological capabilities and their potential value to humanity. This isn't a request. It's an order. Marcus nodded. Understood. Third, and this is the most important condition, you will never again take actions that go against UNSC orders. If you have concerns, you will raise them through proper channels. You will not take matters into your own hands. Marcus met her eyes. Admiral, I can't promise that. If I'm faced with a situation where innocent lives are at stake, and my orders tell me to abandon them, I will disobey. I cannot promise otherwise. Morrison's expression hardened. Captain, you are testing my patience. With respect, Admiral, Marcus said, I'm not trying to test your patience. I'm trying to be honest. I made a choice on Valterra Prime, and I stand by that choice. I would do it again. I will do it again if I have to. Morrison stared at him for a long moment. Then she smiled, a rare expression on her stern face. You are a stubborn man, Captain Webb. I've known that since you were a junior officer on my first command. But I also know that you have integrity. You have principles. And you have the courage to stand by them. That's why I'm giving you a second chance. Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. Thank you, Admiral. Don't thank me, Morrison said. Thank the Valtari. They have been advocating for you, even while you've been in custody. They've sent messages to the UNSC, demanding that you be released and praising your actions. They believe in you, Captain. Don't let them down. I won't, Marcus promised. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Marcus was officially reinstated as captain of the Resolute, and the crew was reunited. The Valtari leaders welcomed him back with open arms, their scales bright with joy. We knew you would return, Kayla said, embracing him in a gesture of friendship that transcended their physical differences. We never doubted it. You had more faith in me than I had in myself, Marcus admitted. That is what friends are for, she said. To believe in each other when we cannot believe in ourselves. The alliance between humanity and the Valtari was formalized in a grand ceremony held on the surface of Valterra Prime. Admiral Morrison represented the UNSC, and High Elder Thrax represented the Valtari. The treaty was signed with great solemnity, and it promised mutual cooperation, shared resources, and a commitment to protecting each other from any future threats. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Resolute, watching the celebrations unfold below. The Valtari were dancing in the streets, their scales flashing with vibrant colors of joy and hope.